It's MED Monday. Today, when the light's green, proceed with well-timed poker aggression. Everybody studies on Monday, so welcome to the 30th Minimum Effective Dose Monday episode. So this week's article, once again, just like last week, comes to us from PokerNews.com, and it was written by Ashley Adams, a longtime writer for Poker News and other publications, of course. The article is called Be Ready to Be Aggressive When Given the Green Light. And it's a follow-up to the stop light article, or stop sign article, that I covered last week. So I'm going to read this article for you today, and then I'm going to give you the minimum effective dose idea. That's the critical concept to take away and apply to your poker game and to your studies. The second thing I'll give you is the minimum effective dose action. This is the one thing that you can do this week to boost your poker to the next level. So now for some words of wisdom from Ashley Adams. Gambate!
All right, everyone, listen up! When Eltrusius, Maiden of the Clouds, blows the battle horn, let the battle begin!
I am Eltrusius!
Eltrusius, the juiciest.
That means you can start.
Be ready to be aggressive when given the green light. My last column was about stop signs in poker. Actions and situations that should cause the observant player to pause before aggressive action. This column is about the reverse, namely, those actions and situations that should make you more inclined to be aggressive in certain situations. Admittedly, these work best when playing against the typical low-limit player. Aggression is called for, especially against your less sophisticated opponents, for two reasons chiefly. Number one, to build a pot you expect to win in a showdown. And number two, to get your opponent to fold. True, there are other reasons to be aggressive, such as to develop an image you might try to exploit later in the game, or to get opponents to be less aggressive against you in the future. But against your typical low and medium limit opponent, most of what you're doing is not sophisticated and can be limited to those two goals, building the pot and getting them to fold. First, green lights indicating aggression to get your opponent to fold. When looking for spots to be aggressive in order to induce folds, first concentrate on actions and hand situations that indicate weakness. Some are obvious, though not unimportant. Certain playing styles indicate weakness and should trigger aggressive play from you. If your opponent is extremely tight and weak, raising with a very tight range, but then backing down and folding to action if he thinks his hand has been outdrawn, that in and of itself should be a green light indicating that aggression may well be called for. This is especially useful when you have position on this player. Say you're in the cutoff or on the button, and your weak, tight opponent raises pre-flop. Your green light should go off immediately. Think about how you might take the hand away from him. If others fold, unless you have an image as a very loose or wild player, you should be inclined to sometimes call this raise, with the intention of betting aggressively on the turn or river to take this hand away from him. You'll see another green light if, after the flop, your weak, tight opponent checks. It's probably an indication that he had a drawing hand, like ace-king that just didn't connect, or a premium pair and a higher card flopped, scaring him into imagining that you might now be ahead. Bet here and expect to take the pot down. If he raises, having check raised, give this weak tight player credit for a rare act of deception. Fold and wait for another hand. Green lights are sometimes apparent when playing tight aggressive opponents with a broader range as well. Especially when in late position, these players mix in more bets with drawing hands and then continuation bet even when the flop doesn't hit. If your image is tight, recognize the green light when they raise on or near the button. This often indicates that they are lightly playing their position. Once again, be inclined sometimes to call these raises and c-bets with the intention of getting aggressive on the turn. Many otherwise strong players tighten way up and play very little against the maniacs. This is an error. Green lights regularly are illuminated against extremely aggressive players as well. Here your intent is to play heads up against the maniac with your medium strength or stronger hands. You should be inclined against these types of players to play very aggressively with these hands to isolate these hyper-aggressive opponents from the other opponents. But be ready to put on the brakes if more conservative opponents enter the mix. For example, if there's a player who's been raising just about every hand, when you hit a decent hand, see the green light and raise him with any pair or large card suited, like a big suited ace. You'll be increasing your variance, to be sure, but against someone who's truly gambling it up, you'll have a decided edge. Your own play may light up a green light as well. If your image in the mind of your opponent has become very tight due to a long string of folding pre-flop, even if you know yourself to typically play many hands, you should recognize the green light and begin to play much more aggressively. Against all but the most observant players with the best memories or good record keeping, your image will be based on your recent playing experience. Take advantage of it by taking an aggressive stab at a large pot. Now for green lights indicating aggression to build the pot. These green lights are dependent both on your image and on your hand. They require a bit more patience and will happen less frequently than those that you'll use to get your opponent to fold. These green lights indicate that a large bet or shove is called for, even if more typical play would be to slow play or bet small. Consider the following scenario. You've used aggression to win a few uncontested pots lately, perhaps against the same player whom you've been bullying or re-raising or check-raising and getting him to release his hand, though he was initially the aggressor. Perhaps you did so with a strong hand, or perhaps you bluffed him. No matter, his apparent frustration with your bullying is a green light to be extremely aggressive when you have the goods. Say you're playing in the blinds with a nice suited ace. The opponent you've been bullying raises pre-flop in late position. Be inclined to call if your stacks are relatively deep. Check the flop no matter what hits, and let him initiate the betting. If you've hit your hand with two pair or a flush, respond to his aggression with extreme aggression, even if your typical play would be to slow play it. Your recent history of knocking him out of the hand with your aggression is your green light to be extremely aggressive here. You may well trigger a call just out of frustration and a desire to not be pushed around. One final note of caution. With all these green lights, you still need to adhere to the typical rules of caution. If you've targeted one player, but others enter the pot, be extremely wary. Similarly, if in spite of the green light, you've spied your opponent has responded to your aggression with more aggression, you should recognize the possible futility in your action and be willing to back down.
Oh, man. That was totally wicked!
Really nice article. I think those two were, last week's article in MED Monday number 29 and then this week's. That's a really good 1-2 punch for really paying attention while you're at the tables. Make sure that you're looking for those stop signs, those situations where your opponents are telling you, hey buddy, you better back down, get out of the hand, or maybe not be so aggressive. And at the same time, pay attention for those green lights, those opportunities where you can probably successfully bluff your opponent off a hand utilizing some aggression, or when you can build that pot and win an even bigger hand by utilizing aggression against a player who just doesn't want to fold. Alrighty, now for the MED idea. When your opponents show signs of weakness, use aggression to take down pots. Weakness can be checking instead of betting, or betting tiny amounts, or they just have a propensity to fold without a very strong hand. And here's the MED action. In your next 3 sessions, bluff bet every time a single opponent checks to you in position. They called your flop c-bet and checked to you on the turn. Now it's your chance to double barrel bluff them. Or maybe you check called their flop c-bet. Then they checked behind on the turn. It's your chance to stab at the river to take it down. Experiment with different sizings and use the bet size that you think will give you the fold you're looking for. Alrighty, thank you so much for listening today, and once again, thank you to Ashley Adams and PokerNews.com for putting out some killer articles there. If you haven't visited Poker News, please do so. Just PokerNews.com, nice and simple to type in. And if you want to learn more about Ashley Adams, you can do so by following his articles, of course, and then he also has his own website, houseofcardsradio.com. Please go check it out. You can listen to this and every other MED Monday episode by visiting smartpokerstudy.com/MED Monday. And please send me those questions via email, sky@smartpokerstudy.com. Later this week in episode 203, I will revisit my #1 poker study tip, and that's recording and reviewing your play sessions. Please stay tuned for that. Until next time, apply the MED idea to the rest of your game and practice the MED action all week long.